right, so a power of a power. An exponent to an exponent, okay? So this is what it looks like. H to the third, all raised to the fourth power. Okay. That's why that H to the third is in the parentheses. Remember, that exponent of a 4 tells me that I'm multiplying H cubed 4 different times. So I've got H cubed times H cubed times H cubed times H cubed. Okay. What do you do when you multiply monomials? What do you do with their exponents? Not multiply them. You add them. Okay. So since I'm multiplying H cubed times H cubed, that means I'm going to add my 2 exponents. Or 4 in this case. Okay. So H to the 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 gives me H to the 12. What is another way of writing 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3? Without addition, Desmond. 3 times 4. So if you look back at our original problem, wasn't that my both of the exponents? 3 and 4? Yeah, so all we're going to do is we're going to multiply those 2 exponents together. Easy as that. So if you look right here in the box, it breaks it down with variables. So if I have a to the m times, or a to the m, all of that raised to the n power, that means I'm going to have a to the m times n. You're just multiplying those 2 exponents. Okay? So if you look at example number 4 cubed to the 6th power, that means I'm going to have 4 to the 3 times 6, which is going to be 4 to the 18th. Okay. So let's just go on and jump down to some examples. Number 1, I've got 7 to the 3rd raised to the 4th. So that means I'm going to have 7 to the 3 times 4, which simplified would be 7 to the 12th.
Would you solve for 7?
No. We're just simplifying. If it said solve, then yes. But since the directions are to simplify, we're just going to leave it like that. Okay. Number 2, I've got 12 to the 7th raised to the 3rd power. So that means I'm going to have 12 to the 7th times 3. Or 12 to the 21st power. Questions so far? Number 3, 8 to the 5th, all to the 7th. I'm going to multiply those exponents, so that means I have 8 to the 5 times 7, which would be 8 to the what? 35th power.
That's a big number.
Okay, let's just skip on down to number 5. Does it matter now that I have a base that's a variable? X to the 8th? No. It doesn't change anything. I still have x to the 8 times 5, which would be x to the 40th power. Or y to the 2nd, all to the 8th. That would be y to the 2 times 8. And what would that simplify to? Y to the 16th power. Questions? Okay, what about number 9 where I have a negative exponent? You think anything changes? Nope. I still have 4 to the 3 times negative 5. What is a positive times a negative? A negative. So this would be 4 to the negative 15th. And then same for number 10, I've got a negative base. I'm just going to leave it like that. So negative 6 to the 6 times 2, which would be negative 6 to the 12th. Any questions on power to a power? Yes. Number 12? Okay. Nothing really is going to change. You've just got a couple of different negatives. So I'm still going to just keep that negative 10 the same. I'm not going to change my base. Okay. So I'm still going to have negative 10. But then that means I'm still multiplying my exponent. So that would be 10 times negative 3. So then simplified, that would be negative 10 to the negative 30th power. Does that make sense? So your base, you're always just going to keep the same. Whatever that base is, just keep it. And then just pay attention to the exponent. Okay. right, let's flip over. Now we've got power of a product. What does product mean again? Multiplication problem. Okay. So this means I'm going to have a power of a product, so some type of multiplication problem raised to a power. Okay. So here, if you see, the only thing that's different is now I have a 3 right there, which would be called a what? What is that 3 called? A coefficient. It's not a base because remember the base would be whatever the exponent is raised, or whatever the exponent is with. Okay. The number out front, that is just a coefficient. So, just like before, this 3d squared, all of that is cubed. So that means I have 3d squared times itself 3 times. But now if you take those numbers out, so say I have, in that like a saying 3 times 3 times 3, can't I write that as 3 cubed? Yes. And then that means I still have the d squared, I have that cubed, because I've got 3 of them. So then when you evaluate 3 cubed, you get 27. And when you do the power of a power, you multiply those two exponents. So that gives me d to the 6. And then combine them together, 27d to the 6. Okay? So basically what you're doing is you're separating your coefficients and your bases. Okay? And then you're just simplifying. So right here in our box again, it breaks it down for us. A times b raised to the m. That's going to break apart as a to the m, b to the m. Okay. So if you look at example A, 7x to the 4th squared, I'm going to pull this 7 apart. I'm going to have 7 squared, and then I'm going to have x to the 4th squared. And then just simplify those together. So 7 squared gives me 49. X to the 4th squared gives me x to the 8th. Okay. Example B is a little bit more complicated because now I have 2 different variables and a coefficient. But I'm still just breaking them apart into 3 different pieces. So I'm going to break my 3 apart. So I'm going to have 3, and then I'm going to take that squared exponent. So that gives me 3 squared. And then I've got my a terms. So I've got a to the 4th squared. And then I can't forget about those b's. So I've got b to the 6th over here. And then I'm going to square that as well because I can't forget about that 2 on the outside. So then when you simplify everything, 3 squared is 9. A to the 4th squared is going to be a to the 8th. And then b to the 6th squared is going to be b to the 12th. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, so let's do number 1. 6x to the 5th cubed. So I'm going to take that coefficient first. So that means I've got 6 cubed times x to the 5th times 3. Okay. So then when I simplify, what is 6 to the 3rd? 216. And then x to the what? 15th. And that's my answer. 216 times x to the 15th. Number 2, I want to take my coefficient apart first. So I've got a coefficient of 5, so that means I've got 5 to the 4th times b to the negative 3rd times 4. So then when I multiply 5 4 times, that should give me 625. B to the what? Good, negative 12. Any questions on that so far? Okay, let's look at number 4. Negative 8j squared cubed. So my coefficient is negative 8. So that means I'm going to have negative 8 cubed times j to the 2 times 3. Okay, that negative 8 cubed, that means I'm multiplying negative 8 times negative 8 times negative 8. Do you remember what type of answer I should get if I raise a negative number to an odd power? Should it be a positive or negative? It should be a negative, okay? So, in this case, it doesn't really matter if you put that negative 8 in parentheses, because you're still going to get a negative answer either way. But I want you to go ahead and get in the habit of putting it in parentheses. So, saying negative 8, all in parentheses, and then cube it. Okay? Because if I raise that negative 8 to the 4th power, is that power an even or an odd number now? It's an even number now, so what should that answer be? It should be positive. If I do not put this in parentheses, and I raise it to an even number, so let's just say to the 4th power, like we said, we should get what? A positive answer. But I do not. Okay? This is why it's important. You've got to put that negative number in parentheses. If I keep that negative 8 in parentheses and raise it to the 4th power, it's going to give me the correct positive answer. Okay? So it doesn't really matter if you put them in parentheses if you have an odd number. But it does matter if your exponent is even. So instead of looking to see whether it's odd or even, just go ahead and get into the habit of putting that number in parentheses before you raise it to an exponent. Okay?
Do you know why it does that? When it's not in parentheses?
Because when it's not in parentheses, it thinks that you have negative 1 times 8 to the 4th power. So it's going to do 8 to the 4th power first, and then multiply that answer by negative 1. Because you do exponents before you do parentheses before you do exponents. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Remember that. If you don't put them in parentheses, your calculator does it opposite. Does that make sense? So just try to get into the habit of putting all those numbers in parentheses. Okay. So what did we say negative 8 cubed was again?
4,000.
I think that was to the 4th power, wasn't it? Negative 512. Yes, that's correct. So I have negative 512 J to the 6th power. Let's skip on down to number 9. Because now I have 3 different parts. I've got a coefficient, I've got a P, and I've got a Q. So that means I'm going to be breaking it apart into how many different pieces? 3 pieces. Okay. So my coefficient is 6. My exponent is 3. So I'm going to have 6 cubed times P to the 7th times 3 times Q to the 6 times 3. And then 6 cubed, we already said earlier, was 216, correct? So my answer should be 216 P to the 21st, Q to the 18th. Any questions on that? Okay, what about number 13? Negative 4s to the 6th, t to the 8th, all of that to the 4th power. So my coefficient is what? Negative 4. So that means I've got negative 4 in parentheses to the 4th power times s to the 6th, and we're going to multiply that exponent by 4, times t to the 8th, and multiply that by 4. So what is negative 4 to the 4th power? Positive 256. Good. So I have 256s to the what power? 24th. T to the 32nd power. Any questions on that? Do you see any more of those examples that look like you might not know how to do, that you want me to do? You good? Okay. Any questions? All right. Your homework is in your book, page 518, numbers 9 through 21, 27 through 29, and 40 through 45.